Hey everybody, Bearded Rogue here, and today I wanted to talk about mobile games or idle games in specific. So one of the things that I use as a bit of a time waster, but also as a very therapeutic exercise for me are idle games. I really like a lot of the thought that goes into these sort of games. For those who aren't aware, an idle game is basically a game, usually a resource management game, where you set up things to happen. Basically, you set up commands to execute, and then you walk away, and it just does those commands until you come back and alter it. A lot of them are factories, or they simulate wartime scenarios where you have an infinite number of soldiers being recruited and outfitted, and most of them involve upgrades or very long resource chains. That sort of thing. They most of the time have multiple in-game currencies, sometimes currency that's for purchase. Most of them tend to be free, and a lot of the better ones tend to be completely free if you want them to be. Money will accelerate your speed or give you some special perks, but is not at all required for playing the game, which makes them pretty handy for people who don't want to spend a lot of money on gaming. Obviously, because most of them are mobile enabled. They're on a mobile phone. They're really easy to just, pull out whenever you have free time, like when you're waiting in line or when you're in the bathroom, to be honest, or just in general while you're not doing anything of note. Pulling out your phone and getting on an idle game, I found, has been more therapeutic in a lot of ways than hopping on to Facebook or Twitter or another social media site and reading the latest news. Idle games as a whole are idle games. They're time wasters, like they're killers of time. And a lot of them are pretty intricate. They have multiple levels or layers of management systems and things that you need to pay attention to. And you can play them optimally and have particular build patterns or decisions, or you can just kind of play them as you go and drift in different directions depending on what they are. But other than puzzle games, or the match 3 type games, so things like Tetris or things like Bejeweled or things like Triple Town or various other things like that, idle games are one of the things that I play most on my mobile phone. Both of them are good in different ways. I like puzzle games and I like logic games. Monument Valley is another good one, because they're brain benders. They allow me to exercise my brain, and I love doing that sort of thing. Idle games are a little bit different. Usually they don't use a lot of brain power. They're more like candy in that regards. Too much of them is a bad thing, but a little bit of them can really make you feel a lot better about your day. And because it runs in the background while you're doing other things, you don't have to give it your full attention. If you miss playing it for an entire day, no big deal. It's something that you can just pick up and put down at your leisure or whenever you have any spare moments. It really works for me as something that I can use to kind of take my mind off of things, and so I play quite a few of them. There's several of them that I can recommend. Right now I'm playing a game called Idle Apocalypse, which is specifically you are running a cult. And this cult is very goofy and very inefficient. And you are fighting some heroes. The heroes are always going to win. In fact, you've made your entire resource gaining strategy on the heroes always winning, such that the minions that you have, you've figured out how to use what is left of them when the heroes are done with them as resources to further your empire, as it were. So, for example, your basic minions are goblins. When they are killed, they leave behind slime. You can use slime to generate another unit in the game. In this case, you use it to generate spiders. I'm not sure why giant spiders are generated by slime, but not all of the things make sense. As I said, it's very goofy, it's very silly. As you are building your empire, you're basically building a big tower, and inside the tower are multiple floors. Some floors will produce resources, some floors will combine resources into new resources, some floors will let you recruit monsters either for free or for various resources that you produce. And so you kind of manage this large tower, upgrading your critters until you unlock new critters who produce new resources that unlock new upgrades in a cycle that kind of perpetuates itself. And when I say cycle that perpetuates itself, this game also has a bit of a roguelike aspect to it. Periodically, you can, at any point, decide to destroy the world. Trigger the apocalypse. So you trigger the apocalypse, and one of the demons, one of the large, great demons that you've summoned, who are all a bunch of lazy individuals, the first one you encounter just sits on the couch and watches TV waiting for the apocalypse to come around. He's not at all scary. He's actually pretty boring and mundane. One of them is a extra large hippie. You know, she smokes the hookah, she meditates, she levitates. Another one's a video gamer. He lives basically in a trash pile with a video game controller in his hand and a slice of pizza balanced precariously on his head. Those are the first three, the only three I've encountered so far. But when you destroy the world, you reap a certain number of souls. And souls can be used to unlock permanent augments. Things like additional floors, so that you don't have to switch back and forth between what you're producing as often, or additional resources that let you unlock future floors that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. All sorts of really cool things are unlocked by souls. But basically, whenever you choose, you reset the game, gain a certain number of souls, which you never lose, and then start over from the beginning, moving in a similar pattern over and over and over again. So the first day that I played it, I ended up destroying the world twice. The next day I played it, I destroyed the world once. It's now been 3 days since I destroyed the world. And I'm getting very close to being able to do that again tonight. I think had I played more at the convention, then I would have already destroyed the world by this point. But right now I'm just kind of getting to the end of what I can accomplish without unlocking more soul-based unlockables. And once I start over, I'll have a brand new thing. In addition, it's the first idle game I've ever had that puts another idle game into it. Each week they kind of have like a goofy little story. Like the first one that I played was Sid is jealous of his sister's tower. Sid is the head of the cult that you're playing. Is jealous of his sister's tower, and so he's hiring heroes basically to go wreck his sister's tower. And it's an idle game wherein you're hiring heroes and then like leveling them up and moving through, and you unlock special skins for the heroes and Sid through the course of this, and your monsters that slightly change their stats going forward if you want to use those skins for them. This week's is Sid in Space. He's decided that destroying just one world isn't enough. He needs to go find some additional worlds to destroy, and so now I'm basically leveling up my crew and traveling a certain distance is the overall measurement of how far I've gotten, in an attempt to find a new world to also destroy, because Sid is that kind of villain. Each floor features these little goofy-looking red-robe cultists that are very Jawa-like. and they just kind of like hang out and say witty banter back and forth to each other. It's on a loop, so occasionally you'll see the same things, but once you get a whole bunch of floors, it's very rare that you hang out on any one floor for any length of time, so they're kind of interspersed here and there. I'm sure that I have not seen all the dialogue options that each floor speaks at this point. Some of them I've seen multiple times. It does reward paying attention to it. Unlike a lot of other idle games, it will only run idle for 4 hours at a go. After that, it requires you to come in and mess with it again. I don't worry about that. I just come and mess with it as I go. You know, I set it up to run overnight while I sleep, and then of course the 4 hours run out while I'm sleeping, and when I wake up I check on it and see what happened and what didn't happen and go from there. But I can just pick it up and periodically throughout the day, and it really has managed to feed my need to constantly check social media in a way that has been a little bit more healthy as far as the amount of stress that it causes. I have zero stress when it comes to Idle Apocalypse or any of the other Idle games that I've played. And that's something that I can't say about even Twitter, which is my favorite social media site at this point. So it's been pretty cool to have something like that, just that I can bring up in the background and mess around with every now and then to kind of take my mind off of things. It's not nearly as involved or nearly as fun as a standard video game. I don't know if I'd even describe most idle games as fun, but they can be mentally stimulating and they can be relaxing, and that's really what I'm using them for at this point. So, you know, there's several others on the market. Idle Heroes is one. Idle Hero Defense. Grow Castle is one that I was introduced to this weekend by a friend of mine who plays similar games of this nature. There's all sorts of them that exist. Some of them are, like Grow Castle is sort of an idle game. You basically earn time that you can use, that it'll just run itself, but periodically you need to come in and, you know, do your own thing. It's kind of like a tower defense game where you fight through waves of enemies and level up your critters and your towers that you use to defeat the enemies over time, so that you can conquer bigger enemies, etc., etc. They are a bit grindy, but that's by design. There's a reason why people play grindy games or do things like World of Warcraft or the Final Fantasy series or anything with a leveling system that takes, you know, many hours or a lot of time to do. It's because there's still a feeling of achievement associated with it, even if the only thing you're really expending is time. And I think it's a really, I guess, fairly simple way to de-stress yourself. I really like puzzle games, but they require more thought and more energy and more effort. And so if I'm not feeling up to a puzzle game, an idle game is a pretty cool alternative. Anyway, I've kind of gone on enough about this subject. Just, if you haven't ever checked out an idle game, I recommend that you see if they're your thing. Some people don't like them. Some people really like them and get into them. You know, maybe it's something that you might help you de-stress a little bit, or break yourself of the habit of checking social media the upteenth billionth time in a row, hoping that something changes or that the news somehow stops being bleak. But that's it for today. So I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. Later.